Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode 105 of the Sofamanager Scottish Football Podcast. And as ever, we have a packed episode on this week's show. Of course, we need to talk about Aberdeen, which now has a very different tone to when John suggested this in the group chat for the podcast documentation. So we will be looking at the successes and maybe the slow slide of Aberdeen Football Club this season. What it's meant for the rest of the league, and we will also be looking at some of the Scottish Cup third round fixtures and give our suggestions as to which would be good picks to visit, and as well, if we have a little bit of time, talking about Sportsound and Graham Spears' suggestions for his own podcast on that. Anyway, joining myself and comment warrior Paul, it is podcast suggestor and pin collector John. Hello, John.
Oh, thanks very much. Hi, Paul.
I was doing that on the fly there. Could you tell?
A little bit. Did I tell you about I managed to get one of my sort of sought after pins?
No, do tell.
I managed to get a Cambuslang Rangers pin.
Did you really?
Yeah, it's just arrived, and I've got a Whitburn Juniors one on the way.
Oh well, I'm sure our listeners will be very jealous. So, shall we get straight on with things?
Let's crack on.
Oh well. So, what was that? An online deal, or did they come to you, or
well,
a homeless man in the street just happened to have one?
I must have went to Cambuslang. This is when I was still in Glasgow, so you're talking at least 18, maybe 2 years ago now.
Yep.
Went to a game. I was like, right, no pins on sale, obviously, at their ground. I was like, right, eBay is the next best place to go for these kind of things.
Of course.
And lo and behold, there was none. But you can set kind of almost kind of like reminders, or you know, if anything even remotely comes up with the name Cambuslang on eBay, I get an email notification.
There must be some sketchy things.
Oh, big time. It's like really weird, kind of like old photo albums, like all this kind of stuff,
historic stuff. Yeah.
Even old programs and stuff like that. It's quite. I'm sure someone's keen on buying it. Lo and behold, last week, Cambuslang Rangers pin badge. Wow. 2 years in the making. Like finally got one.
It's just some random selling some used stuff.
Yeah, just total some random.
All right.
And if you're believing what eBay tells you. 3 had been sold in the last 24 hours, so I was red hot.
So they had multiples.
Yeah, so they must have got like a small batch from somewhere.
So
yeah, right, bought it. Then a kind of day later, I was like, I wonder if there's any Whitburn Junior badges, and I managed to sort of source one of them.
You were down the rabbit hole at that point.
Absolutely. So that's me all. It's actually me all completely caught up.
Okay.
From my very first pin that I bought at a game, so
So you now have them all.
I've now got like 70 odd pin badges.
Very good.
Bit bizarre, but anyway.
You can see my pin collection actually over to your left hand side, hanging
different
off
kind of pins.
the exercise bike. Yes, all from Disney. They, I would say, are a little bit more expensive than the football pins, unfortunately. But lots of regret there. Anyway, we are here, or the sort of headline, you know, in the sort of YouTube clickbait fashion has to be, we need to talk about Aberdeen.
Yes.
Now, when John suggested this, you know, this was part of why I wanted to bring the podcast back, because just Scottish football has been so exciting, really, since this. And this has been echoed in other places and by other people as well. Now, since we've returned, Aberdeen have gone from unbeaten in the league to now not unbeaten in the league, and part of an enthralling draw with a truly terrible, I think everyone would agree with, Hibernian team. Who were pretty inspired. So, as an outsider, you know, John. Now, I'm not saying
I'm not an outsider, Paul.
I'm not saying I'm an. He's got props tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm not an outsider, Paul.
What's he got here?
I am an Aberdeen fan.
He's got a scarf.
You've had to listen to me rattling about Falkirk.
Where did you get the scarf?
We got this when the Scottish Cup semi-final all that time ago.
Oh, with the Motherwell game?
Yeah, we're not talking about that game.
But Curtis Main, remember when he was good?
Curtis Main. Was it Louis Moult as well? I
think so, yeah.
What did you think?
It was just very good. I don't recall you buying that.
Yeah.
Did you buy that?
I had to blend in.
Oh, good for you. Okay. Northern Johnny then. What do you, as you're singing away the Northern Lights and things, what do you make of the Aberdeen season so far?
Yeah, I mean, I took a kind of run back because it's not something I've massively paid attention to beyond
everyone's paying attention.
Just the scores.
It's the story of the season, John.
Yeah, it's to a point, and then you get humped 6-0 off Celtic, and you go.
Yeah, they were proving a point.
Levels, I think, a little bit. I think on the whole, it's been a really good start. You know,
it's a perfect start.
It's a near perfect.
Start. You would never have predicted that.
This is making my neck itchy.
That's your Falkirk genes in you there.
It's making me ill.
Yeah, I don't think anyone at the start of the season would have said they would have done that well.
No, definitely not. Particularly with a brand new manager coming in. He doesn't know Scottish football. If you want to level that kind of
no, totally
brand at them, or whatever you want to call it. So he's come in, done a remarkable job. He was getting a tune out of guys that weren't that great last season.
Totally.
What I can kind of gather. I mean, so the Papi Guy before he got injured. Was looking remarkably well.
Shaden Morris, I think, has been the big one.
Shaden Morris looks a good player, actually, from what I've seen. Rubizic, up to maybe the last 2 weeks, had been looking better.
I'll talk about him later.
Yeah, I'm having now watched particularly the Hibs highlights and the St Mirren highlights as well for their first goal.
Yep.
There's a recency bias for me because I'm struggling to kind of look beyond that. But
yeah, these are the games that are.
They're the kind of two that stick in the mind recently. Yeah, he's done well to that extent. I don't think he's brought in a couple of players, but not too many.
So there's been a couple, and I think that's the nice thing when you get a manager with that sort of experience. Like, Hearts, for better or for worse, had their Lithuanian era, but they did get some pretty decent players from out that way to come to them.
Oh, big time, yeah.
And I think Aberdeen, Topi Keskinen has been one of them that's come in. He's maybe not a 90-minute player per se, but he's had an impact when he's needed to. I'm a big fan of Sivert Heltne Nielsen. I think
he's the older guy, isn't he?
I thought that was a funny one. But if you actually look at his sort of career, he's gone away. He went to Belgium and things.
Right.
So he's obviously an ambitious guy that was looking to sort of push on beyond Norway. Mm-hmm. And actually seeing him in the flesh, you think, I looked at his stats today. He's not played for the international team. He's only played for the under 23s, and he's been great, like alongside Graham Shinney, to be that sort of composure in midfield. And Jamie McGrath is just fantastic.
He looks a phenomenally good player.
Brilliant. If there's ever anyone to dig you out of a situation, he is. He scores when you absolutely need him to.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? So 4 goals in the league. This is league stats only.
Yep.
4 goals in the league, 6 assists.
Brilliant.
As well, which is remarkably good.
More than Billy Gilmore, just saying.
We'll save that for later.
Aye, playing in a very different league. Very different league. I think he's been fantastic, and I think as well Jimmy Tilleen has rode an interesting wave, because actually their signings the year before in preparation for Europe were not bad signings per se. Rubizic we'll talk about. Mitov we'll also talk about. Possibly Malloy as well. Yes, essentially the defence apart from the fullbacks. And then he just added to that a wee bit. And again, what I love about him is the positivity in his management style. If they're behind in a game, as a fan, you're always screaming for proactive action from managers. And I think our culture is really tentative. Nobody's really wanting to push for wins and things like that. There's a lot of settling for draws and things that you see sometimes. Well, Hibernian were chasing a draw the other night, ironically. So it's fantastic to see. And that has mostly paid off. And I think there's been an element of luck to that.
I think to a degree. I mean, you're right. He's not afraid to change it, but he's came in with a bold style, and making a couple of changes at halftime against Celtic at Parkhead for the 2-2 draw.
Yeah,
I mean, massive gamble paid off. Fair play. He obviously recognised what was going so horribly wrong. Didn't have quite so much luck in the cup semi-final,
but long gone by the time they got to halftime.
We'll gloss over that. I think he's done it in another game. What I can kind of gather. Fair play to the guy. Can you see it continuing though? Is this a kind of trend that's going to carry on? Or?
So if you actually look at their goal difference, is basically they're winning goals by a goal a game. There's really not much in it. It's like 1.2, 1.3 goals is their winning margin.
What is the XG? I wrote that down.
I'm so curious, right, about where, because there was a game against Hearts, and Hearts were expected to win that game 4-1. I think Aberdeen won it 3-2.
I don't understand XG.
I kind of get it.
On that point?
Oh, there's another prop. This is an exciting episode, everybody.
This is for you. This is X-Genius.
Oh no.
What can you sell?
So, thank you very much, Sean.
I had to work that one in there. But
James Tippett, X-Genius. So, expected goals and the science of winning football matches. This should make my opinions far more well informed.
I'll maybe explain how Billy Gilmore's a great player.
It probably will, John. It probably will. And again, because I'm not the biggest footballing man in the world, if you could probably tell. Rangers fans writing about your angry comments about Paul Gascoigne in a previous life. Or anything I've said about Falkirk Football Club.
Or the Jinx. Yeah.
In the recent history. I will take a great read at this, John. The data consultancy, the brains behind the analytical revolution.
Newsville.
Well, I had, of course, the Hearts fans at work today were more than delighted to point, how did you lose to Hibs? How could anyone let Rocky Bashiri score? I was like, all right. And they keep moaning they've got this bloke from down south who has this algorithm for signing footballers who's bought in at Brighton or something like that as well.
This is why they've got Shelley Kearney as their lead development.
Oh, yeah.
Strategic.
Someone was saying she might be a Rangers fan, but apparently she is a Hearts fan. So.
I think she has. She used to go to Tynecastle when she was a kid and stuff like that. But the story's there. So.
Well, we've all seen Moneyball, John. You know,
indeed,
it works to a point, but not much further beyond that.
I don't think we're going to be seeing Brad Pitt appear anywhere in like Scottish football anytime soon. So.
Yeah, well, he's doing a movie about Formula 1. You never know. Again, there's got to be a movie in the works about Leicester City. If Aberdeen had perhaps pushed a little bit further, then yeah. So back to that point in the expected goals and things, I think they've ridden their luck a little bit. Right, and the luck has ridden. Most certainly, it's kind of worked out. But again, it's worked out because he's been positive, which is really good to see. Now, again, your fairy tale effect is gone because once you become that unbeaten team, there's a target on your back. And I think you saw the reaction of the St Mirren fans at the weekend when they beat Aberdeen, how much that meant to St Mirren, which was a fantastic victory, although we haven't won there in like 8 years.
Your record against St Mirren, particularly in Paisley, is shockingly bad.
So, I've spoke to someone else who kind of watched a bit more of the game, and they were saying that, you know, St Mirren were certainly more direct in what they did, and they struggled to cope with that. And I think certainly for was it the first or the second goal the lad ran through?
Well, the first goal, it's, I forget the guy's name, Olisanya.
Okay, yeah.
Basically, if we're ever going to talk about Rubezic, it's probably now, because that defending was just abysmal.
Rubezic?
He completely lost the guy over his shoulder, and it was just basically a straight ball right down the middle, and he completely lost it. I
was not a fan of Rubezic in the league last year, and he's very much fire and brimstone in that he is totally committed to everything he does, and he has no pace to correct these fire and brimstone moves that he's making. Right. Malloy alongside him is like, you know, that's a new signing. I think he's coming from Ireland this year.
Right.
I think he's a wee bit younger. He's still building up experience. And Mitov behind them, I'm not a great fan of Mitov. I think that he is not he's saved them at points this season, to be fair. He's saved penalties and things, but he's looked a bit shaky, I know, particularly in his international duties. He's not seen as, I think is it a Bulgarian international?
No, that's really testing my knowledge.
Yeah, I think he's a Bulgarian international, I think, and that's been, you know, I think Jack McKenzie is a brilliant fullback. I think Nicky Devlin is a brilliant fullback as well. Nicky Devlin's probably doing a bit more wandering forward these days. Yep. But, you know, when you're at that point in the league, you can do that. And they've got incredible depth and strikers as well. So I thought the St Mirren game might have been a blip because, you know, it was a late kick-off because of the snow and things like that.
Yeah, it was quite a disrupted kind of run into it. Yep.
Travelled a long way, but then you get that Hibs result. Also, St Mirren's second goal, he climbs on his own player to win the header.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to do that?
Well, yeah, evidently.
Why aren't more of us doing that?
It seems to make a lot more sense.
Because I was looking at it going, well, there's no way he's jumped that high on his own. And then you're like, oh, that's off of a St Mirren player.
He's clambered over someone.
Why aren't we all doing that? Like, can you imagine the carnage? Like, it become like a rugby put-in, essentially.
Aye, absolutely.
Where, you know, you just gather your players in a line. And then how do you challenge that? Like, you can't shoulder barge the guy out the way, or like...
No, I just guess, someone will end up, like, quote-unquote diving and then falling over each other.
I think with my new tactical knowledge, John, if anyone's needing a special... What do they call it in American football? Like, special teams... coach.
You can get your coordinators.
Yeah, if you want your...
you can get your defensive coordinator, you can get your attacking coordinator.
If you want your dead ball coordinator.
There you go.
I'm just going to get you all clambering to get the absolute maximum height that you possibly can.
Better than Austin McPhee.
Aye. Interesting to see as well in that game that Gogic was sent off and then not sent off. It was a pretty strong challenge.
A wild challenge.
He was
lucky he won the ball.
He was very high on the ball. Yeah. I was surprised.
And straight-legged.
Yes. You know, if Morris had got his... He didn't look that fussed about it, actually. If he'd put his... You know, if he'd sprinted a wee bit to get there, he was definitely getting sent off.
Oh, big time, yeah. I mean, in those conditions as well, the speed he got in that tackle was outrageous.
And Duke nearly scored the best goal of all time with, like, the back heel near the end that went off the post, which was a bit unlucky. Yeah. And then you go to the Hibs game, where, by the sounds of things, they were not necessarily looking like the better team there.
Again, I've only really kind of seen the highlights, and the highlights were literally just the goals. So
The
I
highlights
couldn't
on
really
the
comment too much about the
SPFL
actual.
channel are pretty rough these days.
This was like the BBC's kind of 2 minutes 36.
Alright, I watched the SPFL YouTube channel. Did they have commentary on it?
Oh god, no, I had them kind of mute, so I couldn't possibly know.
Did they get Sportsound out on Saturday, by the way?
I have no idea.
Well, how did you see the Aberdeen highlights at the weekend?
It was on the BBC Sports website.
Oh, so you don't watch the full programme? Okay.
No,
I was just curious because the games were...
We'll get to that if we talk about Graham Spears, but
I was just curious because the games were that far delayed, essentially. I was like, oh, they're going to have a stressful time trying to put out some highlights. I did hear that Rangers offered Dundee United to come for a meal at Ibrox whilst things were delayed, and they were like, nah, we're going back to the hotel. Which obviously paid off from a competitive standpoint.
Probably end up charging them or something like that.
Quite possibly. I do think we need a future episode on we need to talk about Rangers as well.
Cool.
Which will prove very, very popular.
We'll need to get Darren on for that one. He's the Rangers man.
Right. So yeah, I think for the rest of the season, you know, the thing I've loved is I've said for years that Hearts should have done better, you know. And be it other teams in the past, maybe whether it be Hibs or Motherwell or Dundee United or whoever was occupying that space. To win this league, you don't actually need to beat Rangers and Celtic. You just need to beat everyone else.
No.
Although Celtic are but like, you're not telling me that they're going to keep that run up to the end of the season.
No, they're not going to win. I highly doubt they're going to win or go unbeaten. It's probably
Which they currently have.
Yeah. I don't see that happening necessarily. I think they will have the occasional slip up. They'll lose to Kilmarnock or they'll lose to Ross County at 12 noon on a Sunday. Those absolutely dreadful fixture slots.
Maybe once the league's been sewn up, who knows.
But the thing is, I can't see Aberdeen keeping pace. You know, I can't see that continuing. These kind of like getting beat off St Mirren, drawing with Hibs, and the form that Hibs are in, you just can't do that.
No,
like that's a major issue. The only kind of saving grace is again kind of looking back at their fixtures, particularly over October, which seemed to have been incredibly successful.
Yeah,
going through quite difficult games. I mean, you got the draw away to Parkhead, then you beat Dundee United at home, and then you beat Rangers at home, all within a kind of short space of time. You know, maybe you're still going through that kind of honeymoon phase with Jimmy Talleen at that moment, but that should give you kind of confidence for those fixtures coming around again.
Yeah,
it's your fixtures against Celtic in particular. They are now kind of really got the momentum going. You maybe caught them cold a wee bit the first game you played.
That cup game was the right, guys. This has been fun.
Aye,
this has been nice.
You've played Challenger. We've had your fun.
Yeah. By the way, though, this is what we're actually capable of.
But beating teams comfortably in the Champions League, right? They can take care of Aberdeen. Right?
They got pumped by Dortmund, so you know that was the solace that we took from that game. Was, well, you know, Celtic got pumped by Dortmund. We are due for a pumping every now and then ourselves. So, yeah, I think Celtic is not the goal. Now, obviously, the next target is to stay ahead of Rangers as best as they can, which they've done in recent history.
When?
You know when Rangers were coming back?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they're
I was going to say something like that doesn't count, but then I can just hear the comments. I don't want to.
Their first 2 seasons in the league, I think Aberdeen beat them to second.
Yeah, to be fair, like a few teams were in between them.
Yeah,
funny feeling Inverness also were ahead of them at some stage. Right?
But then it's great though, because it like you look back at the league in the 90s, and there are like weird fluctuations where like Celtic in that in particular, I think finished a bit lower down the league than others and things, and it's competitive. You know, at last it's not just a 2-horse race. You know,
I mean, it's like it's a 1-horse sprint to the title, but who's going to finish runner up is actually more interesting, I think.
Oh, definitely. And again, other people are still having good seasons. Dundee United are doing great, you know, for example, as well. And St Mirren were, and then they kind of went off for a wee while.
They'll kind of go on off the wild. They're kind of what you would expect a team their kind of size to be doing. Like they should be challenging top 6.
Yeah.
For what they have. I think you're kind of looking at like teams like Kilmarnock are probably a little bit behind the curve and where you would expect them to be. Dundee, you just don't know what you're going to get for Dundee on season by season.
We will expect to see Hibs and Hearts probably do a bit
better.
Exactly.
They're the two that you're really kind of watching going, as and when they get their act together, do they have enough time basically to catch up? They are very rapidly running out of time. I mean, if it gets to January and they're still so far adrift,
yeah,
They're scrambling for top 6. They're not scrambling for Europe.
I mean, you're looking at Aberdeen are, 31, 32 points now, and Hearts are on, 9?
Yeah, I think Hibs will be on 10, but they'll
After they got the draw.
game extra, I think.
And again, their squad didn't look that bad. Some interesting, I think it was that Yuan was ripping past folk on the highlights and stuff, and that Karen free kick is sensational.
Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Second only to the Sockler overhead kick, which was also fantastic.
Yeah. And it was Devlin's second goal. It's almost like a kind of back heel flick thing.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was either very lucky or it was absolutely world class.
That was kind of what Duke had tried.
Yeah, Duke had tried it. Was it against Hibernian? I think he had tried it.
Yeah.
It's it'll be fascinating to see, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in January, because of course he's going to have another window, potentially get another couple of guys in.
Again, I think it's interesting because I think their money came out recently and they made a loss last year.
Right.
But that does not include the Majovsky sale.
Yeah, so that would probably push them back into the black.
So they definitely will have made money, but they did spend a lot of that money, and they've got a lot of depth now. Mm-hmm. So, if you're looking at places to add, it would be great to get in on our centre half.
Get another centre half out the door.
Yeah, well, it's, again, it's good to have more depth, but I think in defence they probably need to be a wee bit stronger, and I think the league's going to be more challenging now because people know what to expect. So you're not going to get the joy. You are going to be treated like Rangers and Celtic now, really.
Yeah, you got
people are going to have a game plan for you, which they're not used to in any way, shape, or form, likely. So we'll see how that goes. But it's been wonderfully exciting, and as a part-time fan, it's certainly focused my attention a wee bit more, which people will not enjoy so much. And again, the fandom around it, they've sold out week on week on week. Which in a place like Aberdeen, there isn't much competition up there. Kind of fortunately, it's kind of them and no one else. Is fantastic, and again, I'd like to see this happen to other clubs as well. It would be great to see Dundee United go back on a storm one season. It'd be great to, well, not Hearts. I don't wish anything good for Hearts, but
I'll stick up for them.
Oh, Jambo John.
Actually, no, I don't. After we did to our friend Gary's van, they're in the sin bin.
Hashtag our friend Gary. So where do you think they're going to end up at the end of the season? You have to predict right now. They're out of the Premier Sports Cup. They're currently in second. They are adrift, but probably by 4 points by the time.
Yeah, so they're 9 points ahead of Rangers, but Rangers have a game in hand. I don't think Rangers will hang on to Clermont for much longer. I think they'll narrowly pip you to second place.
Do you think they're going to hire Tulin in his place?
No, I think they'll go for McInnes. Now's the time.
The concordament. The rumour on Twitter was he was picking the team when he was at Aberdeen. He, as a choice, I think he's very steady. He's a good manager at getting the absolute most out of what he has in front of him.
And I think that's what Rangers kind of need at the moment.
Probably a bit more stability.
If I'm sticking my neck out in the line, I think that's potentially what will happen. I think Rangers will just sneak it. There's just something about Aberdeen haven't really been in this position before.
They have. Do you mind the year they ran Celtic close and they beat Celtic at Pittodrie to go ahead from them?
Like Motherwell beat you in the last day, and that kind of thing comes back into it.
It all went backwards after they beat Celtic, and Celtic were like, okay, what was that? That must have been the Ronnie Dyler days, I think.
Oh, it must have been Rangers. Celtic were never that bad before or after, really.
Yeah,
I think that's potentially what happened. Celtic will run away with the league. Rangers will I'm talking like 3 or 4 points.
Okay,
coming down to the split. It'll be that close. It might even come down to your very last game against them. Will be I think the second place 6 pointer.
The next game is going to be an important one.
Well, that'll set the tone because that'll be at Ibrox as well, won't it?
Yeah. And not even the next game against Rangers, just the next game that they play will be an important one. I don't know who they play, but they play somebody. I think it's St Johnstone away or something like that. So yeah, enjoyed watching this season. It's been great. The team's fantastic. It's given me a lot of exciting moments. I think second's on the cards. I think first was always going to be an incredibly difficult achievement, but Leicester City, John, we've Man City'd it recently. Ironically, we got the same score as them on Tuesday night. So Tillene is probably channeling his inner Pep Guardiola. And again,
all just a ruse.
Prior to this, I would have said if Pep got sacked, Jimmy Tillene, take him. He'll just win everything. You know, Postecoglou gets sacked at Tottenham, take Jimmy Tulin. Like, honestly.
Already try to get rid of their manager.
Well, if they won the league, I think you have to name Aberdeen Abertulin instead. I think that would catch on. Start the petition. It'll get more than the Kick Starmer out petition that's on the go at the moment. So, yes. Thank you for giving me the time to wax lyrical about Aberdeen.
That's all right, man.
It's time to drop ourselves down a little bit. Did you know that the Scottish Cup now enters its third round? I think we have had some on the telly already, haven't we?
We have, aye. We've had first round and second round games.
Was on, wasn't it?
We had, damn it, you've really put me on the spot. We had Broxburn were away to Dalkeith Thistle.
Sounds about right.
Maybe. There's a team just the kind of bypass, Edinburgh bypass. Which Broxburn 1-4-0. Really good game, actually.
No idea.
I went to see Broxburn the week before, not really knowing that they were playing in the Scottish Cup the week after.
Big time on TV.
Obviously just kind of scouting them, see how they see the
Of course. For your famous match reports.
Indeed.
At Bruni001 on Instagram if you want to see more of those.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Second round was 3 Rovers against Stranraer.
Okay.
But Stranraer won 3-2 right to the death, if memory serves.
Oh, no, good for
With
them.
an absolute screamer to win it.
How are they doing this season in League
Stranraer,
Two? Are they bottom or
they're
are they?
not bottom.
Right,
I think 4th or bottom.
Doing a bit better then?
A little bit better, aye. I mean, I think they've got the fright of their lives probably, as most teams kind of do when you finish 10th. I think it was East Kilbride, I think, they beat in the playoffs.
It is looking a wee bit bleak at that end of things, like the news that Dumbarton are struggling and rumours swirling about other clubs as well. Like, do you think we're actually going to see a few of these teams disappear in the not too distant future?
I don't know if they'll disappear. I think they'll disappear. Bold prediction. Will they disappear at the SPFL? Maybe. See, I get the impression, kind of watching Lowland League football in particular, the Highland League is a one-horse race really at the moment with Brecon.
Okay.
Lowland League, there is a diminishing number of teams in that league who are being driven by money. So Kelly Braves and East Kilbride are probably the only 2 left that are kind of more your kind of quote-unquote money clubs as what
a generous benefactor.
Kelty were. The Kelty have turned out to be quite a reasonably sized team in general. You know,
they've done all right.
They've kind of settled really well in League One. That's fair enough. So plenty of kind of conservatories in the kind of Fife area for the kind of support that, but that's where they are. That's fine. Bonnyrigg are probably the one I would say were the first team to kind of come up on merit. Seems like I'm really being disrespectful, but they kind of got there on their kind of own 2 feet, and they're probably going to go back down on their own 2 feet as well. They'll be the first new team to go back down to the Lowland League. So we're beginning to kind of see a convergence almost. I can see some of these kind of teams like Dumbarton, you've got to really feel sorry for them. Unlike Inverness, I have zero sympathy for. I'm not in the kind of Rangers camp of like, get ready, you can get up you.
No. I'm
more like, they kind of spent above their means for a significant period of time.
Yeah.
And it's caught up with them eventually, and that's what's happened.
I think it must be so difficult to run a football club up there. Like, you are so far, and we have a big problem at the moment in the sort of geographical centripetal sort of like the championship. Like, there's that video of the bloke on YouTube went to every single championship ground in one day.
Yeah, I mean, you can drive it. I mean, you can start at Ayr and you finish in probably Kirkcaldy.
Yes, like, you know, and that's kind of not fun. It's kind of, I don't know.
It isn't. You're kind of there on, like I say, if you get there on support and merit, that's fine.
Yeah, no, we can't just move Ayr for the sake of you're too close to.
For what Inverness's kind of anticipated core home support would be, is probably about the same as what maybe something like Morton. You could bring out 1,400 as a kind of average attendance, average home attendance.
But they were a great team for a long time.
Maybe a little. Yeah, but I mean, they've evidently spent money that they just.
You're still mad about that Scottish Cup game? Is that
didn't have? That's a factor. This is a factor. I mean,
they were a great Aberdeen Youth Academy. We wouldn't have had Christie. We wouldn't have had Shinnie. A lot of other.
That's
good
what
players.
we should have focused on. I mean, if they were generating money off of that, that's fine. If you're getting the kind of profit on the transfer fee, terrific. You've got a great business model there.
Yeah.
But to kind of continue the way they did, to not really sell anybody, not produce anybody, that's an issue. And they're kind of rightly being punished for it. I appreciate there's a lot kind of going in the background and stuff like that in terms of like a battery farm that was supposed to be
no idea
built.
why.
I don't understand that.
But actually, that's what they say about the NBA now. Is it's like to get round the cost restrictions, they basically have to become businesses. You build your arena, but then build a bunch of flats and stuff that you own next to it, so that you can generate the revenue to say, no, we can spend this much because we've got this as well, which is mad.
I mean, from what I know of the Dumbarton situation, which is a little bit different, and I'm relying purely on a Terrace podcast Patreon from
Podcastception.
I think it was a Fraser Clark.
Are you allowed contractually to reveal this information since it's locked behind a paywall?
Well, I have no idea, but I've paid my money. It was Fraser Clark talking to Craig Telfer, I think it was.
Okay.
On the if you've got Patreon, I would recommend listening to it. It was actually fascinating. But my kind of takeaway from that is Dumbarton have been kind of, as a football club, been kind of like roughshod by a bunch of businessmen who don't care about the club.
Right.
When that starts to happen, yeah, you have my absolute sympathies, because that is just not a nice place to be.
Yeah.
They wanted to kind of demolish Dumbarton Stadium and put houses on it and shunt Dumbarton out to the outskirts of the town.
All right.
Okay, fair enough. If that's the aim of the game, and it brings in the club money,
Yep.
fine.
That's what happened with St Johnstone and Co, really, wasn't it?
But what I can kind of, again, maybe I could be incorrect, but basically they can't really get planning permission to build these houses.
Okay.
The ground that the stadium's actually built on hasn't even been tested.
Right.
If that's true or not, I have no idea. But if that is true, what I kind of know about that kind of area, it's basically a landfill site.
Okay.
Like it's barely good enough to put a football stadium on. So you're never going to build houses there. So the land is basically worthless.
Mm-hmm.
Dumbarton are owed money by the people who own the land.
Right.
They kind of bought it on an IOU basically with what I can kind of.
It didn't work out for them,
and it's not really worked out. So that's why they're in administration. The money they've been promised has never arrived. They're now to a point where the losses are so significant that they're no longer a going concern basically, and then they have to kind of restructure, or they have to try and get this money somehow if it exists.
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable. Like, you know, that is the size of club that they are as well. They're not going to have the kind of swell of support. There's not going to be like local businessmen charging to the rescue either.
Not at all.
I think again, so yeah, you've got to be worried there. Will they survive? Will they exist? Yeah, probably. Will they be a brand new, a new co? Potentially. They could do a Clydebank, they could do a Gretna, and that they kind of come back as something else.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's the same club, different business behind it, same history. It's
a long road that way, though, isn't it?
They would almost certainly drop into the West of Scotland regionals.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be maintained in the SPFL. Probably wouldn't be maintained in the Lowland League either. It would be
proper low down.
Bottom of the pyramid and work your way up. If that's done through administration only, I think they would probably take it because it's a clean start.
Right.
And you would imagine Dumbarton, the size of the club that they are, core home support of 300 or 400, they'd be able to get themselves back into either the Lowland League and kind of bob about like a kind of East Stirlingshire or a Berwick, and then begin to kind of challenge to get back into the SPFL from there. That I can see that happening, to be honest, just by the way it's going. I hope it doesn't. I hope they just kind of find a solution, but it's unlikely.
I think it's a worry. We're seeing more and more loss makers, and you know something's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, football clubs don't make. They're either
break even or
you've got to target break even. It's just to understand where this money's all disappearing. You know, if you've got 3,000 or 4,000 people coming through a turnstile at say £20 a head, you know, there's a fair chunk of money, sponsorships and everything else. But you know, are we basically overpaying players, or we can't afford the player that we want to afford? Is there another cost that we're not aware of? You know, basically, where is it all going? Like,
I mean, if you think about it though, like football clubs are run by people who are passionate about the football club, aren't they? You know, they're not necessarily run by qualified people. And there's a great deal of this that is a guessing game, isn't it? In terms of who you're signing, how much you're paying them, what is going to come up in the future in terms of bills and things like that. You know, what's going to break and things. And again, I don't envy the people that do the job. It must be almightily stressful, particularly in moments like these, with things that are way out your control. But for the love of the game.
Indeed.
So, speaking of the lower reaches of the pyramid, what do we have, John, for the Scottish Cup third round? Is it this weekend?
It's this weekend.
This weekend. So
okay.
what could our potential viewers and listeners, thank you for viewing and listening, by the way, be getting up to this weekend?
Well, if you want to throw a couple of quid into the buckets at Dumbarton, they do.
Is that our first game?
No, they pretty much. They kick off. They actually play on Friday night. It's not on the telly as far as I'm aware, so I don't know why it's on Friday night, but nevertheless.
I don't know, there's a parade on Saturday. Turning on the Christmas lights, I don't know.
I mean, Dumbarton High Street.
Maybe. Is there such a thing?
Not enough police and shields to hold them back. So that's certainly Friday night. I am half tempted to go to this. The alternative on Friday night is going through Easter Road for the Scotland women's game against Finland.
See some good finishers there.
Yeah, indeed.
And I've made the same joke about men, by the way, so don't write in.
It's a court case, it's a live court case. Can't go through it. What is that? So
funny stories today that there was an assembly at school about misogyny.
How times have changed.
Well,
I remember when it used to be about like the highway code.
No, this was about misogyny, but I had an amusing conversation with two unnamed people at the end of the day, and I can't remember what she was getting, but the boy must have been late or something. And she was like, "Oh, you didn't even turn up to the assembly today." And he was like, "Oh no, I didn't know what was on." And she's like, "Misogyny." He's like, "What's misogyny?" It's like the irony of this conversation is tremendous. So thank you for that interaction. But we did have a positive conversation thereafter about what misogyny was. You know, all was well. But that amused me. Anyway, back on track to Easter Road, Scotland against Finland.
Indeed. So I'm probably not going to that because
I thought you were going to that.
No, I'm probably going to Dumbarton. I
thought you just said you were going to go to the Scotland game instead.
You have a choice. If one of the two, I'll probably will go to Dumbarton if I can be bothered doing anything, to be honest.
How long does it take you?
About an hour and a bit to get to Dumbarton. I've been to Dumbarton once and I vowed never to go again.
And you're going again?
And I'm thinking about going again, so it's...
Got to get those footballogy check-ins, don't you?
This is it, yeah. It's just kind of...
Anyone with any other interesting footballogy check-ins, do comment below. John will be very interested to read that.
I would. Or give me a kind of follow on it. I think I'm just called John Brown on it, actually, which is...
Did you get that name?
Yeah, I was so early into
That's a pretty decent click, because there must be a few John Browns out there, particularly football fans.
Oh, yeah. Could be ahead of the game here.
There you go.
So that's Friday. Saturday, I've just kind of put through there's quite a few fixtures on Saturday. I kind of went through some like kind of quote-unquote top picks.
Ooh, do tell.
So I suppose the kind of headline one for Saturday is actually Linlithgow Rose against Wraith Rovers.
Ooh.
Which I was tempted by because I went for a kind of Saturday game. This is an interesting game. Like Linlithgow doing really quite well in the Lowland League. I think they're like 5th, but they're only 3 points off the top.
Okay.
Quite a kind of tight league because they can actually top 5,
They're
top
kind
6.
of your second team for a wee while there, really, weren't they?
I enjoy going to Linlithgow. I think it's a brilliant place to watch football. Like
super central.
Really central.
Super
easy
it's like
to get 5 minutes. You can park. There's a high school just beside you, so you can park at the school. Literally walk along the road and you're in.
Yep.
It's brilliant. If you get in the train, hundreds of pubs, really friendly pubs as well, which is great. Yeah, terrific steak pie, which I can no longer eat because of my health. I can no longer drink. I've never been in the social club. I've always wanted to.
It's always very busy. It's always looked very busy.
It's now redundant because I can no longer take alcohol. Will always me.
See John's episode on Germany and beer recommendations for as to why this may or may not be the fact.
It's amazing what can happen in a 2-week block.
We're going to see Laos FC at this rate as well.
If anybody can serve alcohol, Middle East is probably where I'm supposed to be.
Okay. You do well with the heat, right?
I would do terribly. Yeah.
Why are Wraith Rovers dunking in the third round? That seems quite early for them.
No, it's championship teams.
Championship teams in there.
Third round, so all the championship teams are now in it. In terms of Lithgow, they beat Clacton 3-0 in round 2 and Losmouth 3-1 in round 1. This is their third home tie in the bounce.
Okay.
I kind of want to fancy them as a wee cup upset, but it's maybe too obvious.
Traditionally, they've always done quite well in the Scottish Cup. They've always kind of punched above their weight there. Wraith is obviously quite a tall challenge, but again, in these sort of games, there's not a huge difference, I think, and it's particularly if they're at Linlithgow Rose as well.
It should be a really good crowd. Wraith only had 4 wins in the league this season, which is not a good kind of place to be. Maybe being out of the cup would do them a bit of good in terms of focusing on the league and getting out of that kind of relegation scrap.
Well, Linlithgow still got Mark Stowe.
No, he went to Arbroath and then left Arbroath and he's went somewhere else and I've forgotten. But he's no longer there.
He's Magic Guru.
I think it would be. There's 1 or 2 decent players still at Linlithgow Rose. They're number 7, whose name has just went completely out of my head, which is really embarrassing.
Future Gary Lineker here, guys.
Dylan Patterson. He's worth a watch, actually, number 7. I don't think he would make it much beyond the Lowland League, but he's terrific. He's a really good kind of pacey winger. Certainly look out for him. He's a he's a top man.
Yeah.
My sort of second kind of top pick.
Uh-huh.
It's beginning to kind of diminish a little bit. So I went for Clydebank against Bucky Thistle.
Okay.
I found that kind of interesting. Clydebank are unbeaten in the West of Scotland Premier.
All right.
So they're probably the next team I would expect to see start to come into the Lowland League, see how they're getting on in the Lowland League, and progressive they are.
Bit of heritage. A lot of people probably cool to see them back.
I think the curious thing about the West of Scotland in particular is there's very little kind of Glasgow based teams. So East Kilbride's probably the only one. Cali Braves are in Motherwell. There's nothing like, there's no sort of bigger teams like Pollock, Clydebank,
right?
These kind of two in particular. So Clydebank are maybe on their way back, so to speak.
Yeah,
for their kind of glory days in the bygone era. They beat Keith. I think it's 3-0 away, and then they beat Socky Juniors.
Okay.
In the second round. Most scenic ground in Scottish football.
Socky Juniors.
Socky Juniors.
Why is that?
You got a terrific view of the Oakles.
I think I might have driven past it before.
It's almost like an uninterrupted view, apart from the kind of wee main stand bit.
Yeah.
I've been once. I went before a Falkirk Alloa game last season, which was kicking off at 5:30. So you could do Socky and then quickly nip in the car into Alloa for the second
just
game.
Nip off 10 minutes before the end. Right in, by the way, if anyone did that at the Aberdeen Hibernian game, by the way, I'd love.
Well, I think there was potential for, was it last weekend, they were talking about it on the terrace, you could do, I think the Edinburgh City game ended up getting postponed, but you could potentially have done that game and then
another few.
Went to the Hearts Celtic game in
It
the
was
evening.
late, wasn't it?
Got to kick off. But in terms of sort of Clydebank and Bucky, I think Clydebank worth a watch. They're playing Bucky her Highland League kind of mid-table obscurity. You know, again, maybe worth a wee flutter if the odds are good on some random betting site that still does Scottish Cup games.
It keeps a bit of engagement. Now again, they usually do highlights as well. They usually do like pretty
Scottish
good packages.
Cup, yeah, to be fair, the actual Scottish Cup social feeds are brilliant for that kind of highlights.
Still remember they kicked me off the gantry at Pennycook Athletic when I worked as the cameraman for Stennismuir because they'd paid for some scaffolding.
This is your scaffolding.
Well, yeah, it was one of these things where I'm someone who doesn't ask for permission, but instead I will ask for forgiveness instead.
That's good.
So I was given blatant instructions not to go up there, so I just went up there, and they kicked us off. But they had cameramen at Pennycook, for a Stennismuir game. It was a fantastic ground as well. Loved that. Are they in? I'd go back there.
I don't think I've ever.
Pennycook Athletic.
I think I have.
If you're on the half pipe and you do a trick high enough, you get to see into the ground. So you notice some Livy fans doing, maybe not fans, but they were stood on the hill next to
I've seen that.
The Almond Vale.
I'm checking my stats.
Oh, he's checking his stats.
I'll have to. This is.
Has John been to Pennycook, listeners? We're going to find out. He's been to.
Loading.
You were going to go to Galliferian the other week. Did you end up doing that?
No, the weather was so abysmally bad. I've been threatening to go to Gala for.
Is that in Gala Shields?
Gala Shields, aye.
That's got to be a fair distance, isn't it?
But it's only about an hour and a half, really. Okay. It's the kind of long and winding road, which I don't particularly want to do in weather like that, when it's like freezing outside.
Aye.
I'd love to go in the summer on a kind of reasonably nice night for like a Tuesday night kickoff.
Right.
I think that would be absolutely class. But it's kind of sacrificing the annual leave basically to go there and then back again the same day.
Again, I've never been through the borders that much. There was one trip back from a British touring car race and some dodgy Google Maps instructions that took me there. It was very idyllic, but not what you needed when your tyre was losing air pressure frantically.
That's not ideal. So,
and you were concerned about getting home.
We are. Was it Pennycook? Oh, I have been to Pennycook.
Have you?
Where did I go to Pennycook?
He's made it up. He's definitely just driven there and driven back, hasn't he?
Oh, I have. I went for a East of Scotland Cup final. How anorak is that?
How long ago was this?
That was 20th of May 2022. Linlithgow Rose beat Galliferian 3-1.
Oh, right, there you go.
Oh yeah, I remember that actually, because it was a wee white kind of, I don't know what kind of dog it was. I'm not very good with that kind of thing.
A wee Scotty dog or something.
But it had like a Linlithgow Rose rosette on its collar and stuff like that.
Oh, did it?
And I was like, yeah, definitely cup final day here.
But you've technically never seen Pennycook
I've
play
technically
there,
never seen Pennycook there. I'm fairly confident John Hughes and John Collins was at the game. I could just kind of taken it in, obviously.
Love John Collins. Tremendous. His time in management was cut far too short for my liking.
He was ahead of the game in terms of fitness and stuff like that.
I'm sure I've seen a clip of someone walk up to him and say like tempo, 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 because like that was one of his things. Because apparently he's Hibs manager, he was like super intense on the fitness and stuff.
I think he fell out with a lot of players because of that. I think that's probably what kind of cut his tenure short.
That panned out well for them, didn't it?
Still, the kind of attitudes kind of lingers through that club.
Yes, think about that now.
The only other two games I'm going to kind of flag up in the Scottish Cup is Fraserburgh against Annan, which I think is the longest journey in the competition so far.
Brutal.
That's horrendous.
I don't think you'll get many away fans there.
You're not going to get too many Annan fans. And the last game's the game I'm actually probably definitely going to be going to. That was a kind of oasis. Is Musselburgh against Bo'ness on Saturday afternoon.
Right, okay.
Why am I going to that? I've no idea.
Is it Musselburgh Athletic? Is that their name?
Yep.
Yes.
There you go. You know the name of the park?
Nah.
Olive Bank.
I would never have got that in a million years. That could have been our quiz this week.
Musselburgh must have been on. They have been one of the kind of recent clubs to appear on the early rounds of the Scottish Cup BBC coverage.
Yep.
So going to go on there. I've never been before. It looks things. Musselburgh top of the East of Scotland. They are scoring goals for fun. You know, again, they're in good form. Bo'ness they're doing okay in the Lowland League, 8th in the Lowland League. You know, they're 10 points off East Kilbride.
I think this seems like a foregone conclusion from what you're saying.
They did really quite well last season, to the point where if East Kilbride hadn't been spending so much kind of money on better players, they might have actually finished won the league.
How are the Colt teams doing there?
So Celtic being in particular, I think are joint top.
Right. I think Hartsby last season were one of the better ones, weren't they?
Yeah, I think Hartsby finished second. There was a time when it looked like they might actually win the league.
Aye. And
in which case it would be, I believe it's second place, or the next
would then go into the playoff.
Kind of non-B team would go into the playoffs. I think this could be interesting. For what I've kind of, particularly Bo'ness played, who did they play in the last round? Oh, it's been right in my head again. I forgot to write it down. A lot of their kind of, say 30 or 40 Bo'ness fans went up for the game.
Okay.
All in like fancy dress and all that.
All right,
it just looked class for like watch for a distance.
I'm guessing it was Halloween time, maybe?
I might have been. No, I think it was well before that.
It was just for the crack.
October, I'm sure. Just for a crack. And they've done a few like mental away games and stuff like that. And that, for some reason, they take quite a big away fall into the Scottish Cup games.
Right.
So hoping the same kind of thing happens in this game. Good few goals, new ground, pin badge, back up the road.
New definition to get the badge in, eh?
Get the badge in.
On the pins. Well, that sounds very good. Very exciting. Again, it's nice to see something different. I always like watching, for example, the FA Cup highlights, because you get a bit more at kind of what's going on. And it's always fun to pick out the ex-SPFL players there as well. I do actively root against East Kilbride and McKennedy. So
just these posts on Twitter.
Yeah.
They're just, infuriating. Like, that's... Each to their own, I suppose.
And his son Simon Ferry and his favourite brother and what's the midfielder's name that I've forgotten now?
I mean, what I'm really feeling uncomfortable is particularly Si Ferry. I've seen him kind of gotten onto the coattails of John McGlynn over the last couple of weeks on social media.
He responded to something after the Queen's Park game, didn't he?
No, I can't take to that. That's not acceptable.
Well, we'll see how that. I think they gave Falkirk 400 tickets for that game.
Yeah, Christ knows how. I mean, you are basically going to like, you know, very niche for us, but like it's basically like going to watch a football game at Graham High's AstroTurf.
Aye,
it's basically a cage.
You've got a rectangle, and that's about it. Yeah, that'll be interesting. So we've got about 10 minutes left, John. So I think that's plenty of time to discuss.
To rattle on about Graham Spears and Sportsound.
So do you want to give us a bit of context?
So this randomly appeared on my Twitter feed. I think it was yesterday that I sent it over.
Yesterday as well.
So Graham Spears had kind of sent an innocuous X or tweet or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Basically asking for people's opinions on Sportsound. They were doing a podcast, obviously discussing it themselves. This gained an enormous amount of traction. Amy McDonald commented on it.
She even in the country these days.
Yep. Which actually made it into the Daily Record. So they started talking about it.
Richard Foster's maybe not getting any punditry gigs on there anytime soon.
She had basically an axe to grind because Richard Foster spending more time in the house than she'd like. I'm trying to. She had a kind of broad negative opinion of it. Basically, there's too much sort of put about it and forced debate and stuff like that, rather than just talking about the games that are happening in front of them, which is what it used to be basically. Particularly when Richard Gordon kind of cheered it in its kind of infancy. I used to love it. I used to absolutely. I wouldn't say I would listen to it religiously, but any moment I would get a chance when I was at a game myself, which was Falkirk were that bad, it was more often than not.
You'd stick it in your
I would definitely
ear
listen
or
to
something.
it, and it was a good listen. and you had a wee bit of kind of debate and a wee bit of banter, but it was nothing serious, and there was no kind of forced antagonism between Michael Stewart and Tom English.
Were we saying that's forced antagonism?
That's forced. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Like, and Kenny McIntyre just...
It certainly initially wasn't.
No, I think right now, I mean, they're kind of... They're having sort of debates and arguments for argument's sake, and there's no real substance to it. And nobody really cares. Like, you know, it's... If you're listening to that because you just want to know what's happening. Like, if I'm a Falkirk fan and I'm listening to it, I want to kind of know what's happening at, say, the Livingston game.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm interested in. I could not care less about the in-depth discussion about whether Philip Clement is a good Rangers manager or not. Don't care.
So I think that, like, so I used to be quite avid. Like, I used to go out and wash the car on like a Saturday morning or something, and it would go on the radio. And it was just part of the routine, part of the rhythm. It's not really part of the routine and the rhythm anymore. And again, we're at an interesting point in the media landscape now where, you know, a lot of American sports channels are doing this as well, where there's like these talking head shows and there is antagonism for the sake of antagonism, and that's what moves your like social media clips and things like that.
Aye, so it's all, it's clickbait. So that's exactly what they're aiming for.
They're not like big social media content creators as such. Like I don't see any of the BBC Radio Scotland clips come up on my social media at all.
No.
So then at that point you're asking, is it just a bunch of old men getting in a room and just hashing out the same thing over and over again?
Yeah, because they're living on past glories, and this is the other kind of running theme through the comments from Graham Spears' kind of his post on Twitter was open all mics has turned into an absolute travesty. He's not very good at kind of keeping control of it.
Well, you have to be. That is a very difficult thing to run.
It's an incredibly difficult thing, but he's probably fine for kind of doing maybe like a kind of documentary type show or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know about it. It's just maybe just his tone of voice. He's not really got the voice for radio because he's been compared to Richard Gordon, who definitely did. He had the temperament for it and everything. Kenny Mack just seems to rile people up. He riles me up, and I couldn't explain why. I'm sure he's a lovely guy.
He will ask questions that elicit reaction.
It's the way he says it, and it's so forcible. It's like his opinion is like God, and everyone else is nobody. That kind of winds me up. I'm sure he maybe does it for effect. I'm sure he's not like that. But then you've got guys like Willie Miller, Packy Bonner, I'm trying to remember what's his name, Derek Ferguson.
Yes.
All these guys who were famous in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They no longer appeal to the kind of younger generation that I'm sure they're probably targeting. They don't mean anything to me as footballers.
But then if you look at, so you're a big McFadden fan as a pundit, aren't you?
I quite like McFadden. He's a wee bit kind of the dulcet tone.
He's very dulcet. Yeah. But he's always trying to take digs at Jonathan Sutherland.
It's just banter. This is what they're trying to get at.
But then that's the television audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the demographic on the radio probably does skew older than the television audience.
Potentially, but you know, these guys have been at it for so long. It's now just kind of time to move on.
See, I think this is the big problem though, in that you were never breeding the Richard Gordon replacement. And this is the big problem we find with Lineker as well, in that, well,
they're now kind of struggling because I think Mark Chapman, if we were to go down that route, was probably the guy they wanted.
Dan Walker would have got that job all day long if he'd stuck with the BBC.
Yeah, he probably would.
And he would have been perfect, I think.
He's okay.
My point is, though, you've had Gary Lineker doing that since, what, the mid to late 90s?
Oh, God.
Right?
He's been doing it since I've been watching football.
Richard Gordon had done open all mics pretty much since the inception of that as an idea.
Yeah, but even before that. So, you'll may or may not be the same as myself, but I was certainly brought up listening to either home games or particularly away games. It was off the ball 12 till 2 till we got to the ground.
I think off the ball is really thin on the ground now.
It's maybe kind of run its course a wee bit. But again, I think it's the same kind of stories over and over again with these guys. Yeah. And to be fair, Ray Bradshaw's kind of stepping in as best as he can. He's okay. It's almost impossible to replace it. You can't get like for like. Not anymore. You can't find these kind of characters.
But then there should be competition in terms of the likes of what we are currently doing, and then the likes of what, you know, pretty much every football club out there now has their own podcast.
Yeah, it's all the kind of partisan bits. It's there. But certainly for off the ball, that's how I learned about Scottish football.
Okay,
was just listening to these guys and learning all the kind of the stories and, you know, who certain players were at the time, and even like them looking back at the time
Mm-hmm.
is a bit of laughing. Some of the jokes and stuff, and you could get away with it at the time. There's another kind of big element to it.
Not now.
You could get away with it. I wasn't so much. I didn't really watch Soccer AM quite as much. I never really had
It was
Sky.
barely about football, though, if you actually
Yeah.
think it was about the people that
It was
went
a lad
to watch
culture.
football.
It was lad
Exactly.
culture.
Well, you know.
Fair enough. But so you love that. Then critically, and this kind of goes back to the comments about what sports sounds like, is that they don't particularly like the fans calling in so much
Okay.
and constant listening to these kind of pundits talk about the game. That kind of lost its appeal, which I was a little bit surprised at. And the other thing actually as well, before I forget, is they absolutely seem to detest the 3 random song choices for some random guy.
I saw the comments were like...
They were really roasting that.
But then, with the Colin thing, you look at, like, is it Super Scoreboard that's on Clyde One?
I Clyde Super Scoreboard, and then fourth or something like that does the one with Stephen Mill
Uh-huh.
and Ewan Cameron.
Is that a football phone? I'm sure I saw something like that.
It's like a kind of listen along type thing. It's more it's a radio show. I think maybe it's Heart. It's a radio show, and then they talk about the scores in the
Okay.
background. That works quite well.
Okay.
I think I would probably at this point I would rather listen to that than I would
But see,
the Sports Sound.
those are the people that needed to come in, and BBC Scotland just feels like a dinosaur now.
Is it because it's the BBC? You know,
Yeah. And these people have hung on for so long that, there's been no chance. There's pretty much been nobody.
There's very
come
little.
through.
I mean,
And we've passed the golden generation of broadcasting now. Like, some of my favourite commentators are pretty much gone and things like that now.
aye, it's guys are coming through, and it's too much analyst.
Yeah,
Based.
I know.
I don't even get words out. That annoys me. I just want to hear what's going on at the games, have a wee bit of banter, light-hearted. It's a Saturday afternoon. I'm not interested in having an in-depth conversation about the tactics of name your manager. It's pointless.
So they're trying to show off. So,
Nobody's interested.
right, John, I've given you the keys to that BBC Scotland building in Glasgow. You are now
Right.
the station controller. What do you do?
Set fire to it and start again. No, I don't know. I mean,
but then a refresh would not be a bad thing. But then,
so,
would it cause a bigger uproar? Because you then have another new step of developing all this new talent, getting people used to these new personalities.
if I was in charge, say, I don't wish ill on anyone in there, but say Tam Cowan and Stuart Crosgrove retire.
Yes.
Right, they just go, right, we've had one lot, we're done. You're probably looking at somebody like Ray Bradshaw coming in.
Yep.
That's okay. And then they start looking at the guys for the terrace, maybe get Sean McGuigan in there. Because
I've always thought they should have done more.
they should be doing more, because they, particularly McGuigan and Telfer, are 2 guys who support lower league clubs.
Yep.
And it takes them away immediately from the kind of Old Firm bias which hangs over the BBC like a plague. It is so.
Well, I think people
it
say it's
runs
so
right through.
Glasgow centric.
Yeah,
isn't
it's the Strathclyde FA. It's that kind of vibe runs through.
Sadly, the vast majority of Scottish football is based or from there.
So they need a kind of almost like a kind of DEI type thing. Only it's like across like every kind of all 42 clubs, and then the Lowland League
Okay.
and Highland League in
Okay.
Scottish football. You have these kind of guys in. They have a bit of banter. They certainly know their stuff in the Lowland Leagues. That's what you're kind of after. That kind of sets you up.
Yep.
Open on mics, it just needs to be light-hearted. I'm not too fussed who the pundits are. If it's Kenny Mack who's still hosting it, fine. Doesn't really
Just
matter.
tell us what's going on in between
Yeah,
times.
he just needs to dial it down. That's the critical bit. It's just light-hearted stuff. Folk just want to listen to what's going on.
Yeah.
And then in the afternoon, or say 5:30, you remember your call with Jim Traynor?
No, but let's say I did.
Tremendous. It was one of the best things that was ever on the radio. It was from 5:30 to 7 o'clock. So if you were coming back from like Dundee or that, it would carry you right through home.
Yeah.
It was just fans phoning up, having an absolute meltdown at Jim Traynor, who I think he ended up working at Rangers for a while after he got his jotters and his kind of show died a death. But
Okay.
that kind of thing was great. It was top banter, like absolutely tremendous. I would bring that back.
Well, I know as well from my experience, like, we always listened to it coming home from Scotland games, and the punditry was always dreadful. Just dreadful. The last thing I always wanted to hear was Tom English banging on.
Simile man.
Oh,
It drives me nuts.
Again, for us, it probably needs to be more youthful and kind of relevant to us. It is probably time to move on, but does the old guard want that? Who knows?
They're not going to hold on. I mean, it's a cushy number.
No, but I mean, the old listeners, essentially, who want change and things, that...
I mean,
We shall see. Anyway, that seems to bring us very, very near to the hour mark.
Nearly bagging an hour. Yep.
Exactly. So if you have made it all the way here, do like, subscribe, leave us a comment, and we'll try our best to get back to you. I'll leave John on responding comments details this week. I will be busy reading my ex-genius book, and next week I'll be back sounding far more informed. And there's graphs and everything. I love a graph. Bar chart, look at that. Any pie chart? Oh no, that. Manchester United and Atalanta. I've no idea what that is, but that must be a case study of a game.
Indeed.
So I will get to that, and I'll give you a review of this and share my thoughts. And next week you can probably expect some reviews of Scottish Cup. Should we talk about Rangers next week?
Oh well,
we're not popular in that sphere anyway.
I know. We've just rattled on about not talking about the Old Firm and then what we do.
Let's invite them to lunch and then see if they'll come. So that is what we'll do. But anyway, it's a thank you very much for listening for myself, Paul.
Yeah, cheers guys, all the best.
And have a good evening, a good afternoon, and a good morning. Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay.
We are good to go.
Good to go. Hot to go.
Hot to go. Oh, I hate that song.
It's grown on me, not gonna lie. Anyway, oh no, I can't do that. 3, 2, 1.